What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, you know, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, well, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to DoloresCannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS.
Established over 100 years ago, Watkins Books is one of the world's oldest and leading independent bookshops specializing in esoterica. We have the widest selection of esoteric books in the UK, and our friendly and knowledgeable staff are here to assist you in a unique ambience of our shop. So come and visit us in the heart of London as we're open every day.
The More Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. The comments and views expressed on The More Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The More Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Broadcasting from the UK and across the world online. You're now watching the UK's only alternative late night talk show. And I'm your host, Kevin Moore. For the next hour, I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. On today's show, I'm joined with Garnet Shouser, who is a retired lawyer who lives near Victoria on Vancouver Island with his wife Kathy and his little dog Abby. Now, after practicing corporate law for over 30 years with 2 blue chip law firms, he retired in 2008 with his first book, Dancing on a Stamp, which was published in 2012. Now, since the release of his first book, Garnet has been active with book signing tours and speaking engagements, and has been a frequent guest on radio talk shows. His third book continues the saga of the author's spiritual awakening that began when he was confronted on the streets by a homeless man named Albert, who turned out to be a wise spirit in disguise, an emissary from the spirit world. The author recounts more astral travels with Albert, who took him to meet several distinguished souls on the spirit side, including Moses, Jesus, and Mother Mary. In the Akashic Records, he got to view an ancient human civilization that lived among the dinosaurs, the building of Stonehenge with the help of visitors from the stars, and the crash of the alien spacecraft in Roswell in 1947. Garnet Shouser, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Kevin. I'm delighted to be back here again.
I know, it's becoming a bit regular. This is the book number 3.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Already, wow. It doesn't seem that long ago that the previous book was out.
About a year ago, came out.
A year ago. Has the year gone really quick for yourself?
Yeah, it sure has. Yeah, I've been very busy with radio shows and speaking engagements and writing my 4th book.
I know you said that off air. Writing the fourth book, that's incredible. And we were saying off air as well, just how powerful internet radio has been for you to deliver this message.
Yes, it has, because this show is number 80 for me, Kevin, as I mentioned before. So I've been quite busy. That's since June of 2013.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. We did mention this off air. Number 80. It's almost like, had you had sort of released these books 10 years ago, would the impact have been the same without, having internet radio there and being able to reach the right audience?
No, nowhere close to it, because there's so many internet radio shows in this genre, like yours and so many others. It's easier for me to get on and get my message out. And I think 10 years ago, they probably didn't exist, Kevin.
No, absolutely not. And I suppose my show's a little bit more. It's a little bit different in the sense with having the TV aspect there. It's a lot more work, and I completely understand why people stick with just sometimes. But even this, the TV idea and having the Skype there, it just, the quality was just not there to be able to do this as we're doing it now. So it's almost like, my point is that this was divine timing for these books to come out from 2012 onwards as they have.
Yeah, I think it was fortunate, and I owe it all to my spirit guide Albert, who chose the time to appear in my life and get me to write the books. And had he done it 10 years before or 15 years before, I probably wouldn't have written the books, or if I had, no one would have read them. So it was perfect timing on his part.
Right, yes, absolutely. Now, we're just going to, as you're always doing a lot of interviews, I'm sure you do without knowing too much really, but, I'll link the previous interviews below this video now, but just for those who are coming straight into this interview without having any previous context, describe who Albert was and that particular meeting that happened initially for the contact that was made between you both.
Well, it was back in 2007, Kevin, and I was still practicing law in Calgary. And I took a stroll down the street one sunny afternoon, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a homeless man jumped out in front of me. And he looked very much like a typical homeless person, with long stringy hair and a scraggly beard and dirty slept-in clothes. But instead of going around him, I stood there transfixed because of his amazing sparkling blue eyes, which shone like two little blue stars. And they were penetrating deep into the very depths of my soul. And at the same time, he was sending me this wave of pure unconditional love that was just infusing my whole body with an amazing sense of peace and security and well-being. And so I was very happy to stand there in the basking in the gaze from this man's amazing eyes. And then he, after a while, he broke the spell, and he said to me, "Why are you here?" And then he quickly disappeared into a nearby store. And so when I finally collected my wits, I decided I better go find this man. Went into the store to try to find him. He was nowhere to be seen. I went back out into the street, walked up and down trying to find him. He had disappeared into thin air. So the next day I came back to the same street, same time, hoping to find him. And I walked up and down, and I finally spotted him sitting all alone on a bench. And so I went up to him and I said, "Who are you? And why did you stop me the other day?" And he said, "Well, I'm a soul just like you. I'm here to answer your questions and help you on your journey." And so that was the beginning of a dialogue that we had that went off and on for several months. I sat down on the bench beside him, and I found out that his name was Albert, and he was really one of my spirit guides in disguise. And he had literally come from beyond the veil, from the spirit side, come into my life to answer all the big questions of life that I've been asking myself for ages, like things like, who am I? Why am I here? What's my life's purpose? And what happens to me when I die? And so he was there to answer my questions. And it turned out that I was the only one who could see him in the physical form. As the homeless man, anybody else passing by in the street would have seen me sitting alone by myself on the bench. And so he had chosen to manifest himself to me that way, to introduce himself into the conversation. Because had he just started talking to me as a voice in my head, I likely would have thought I was losing my mind. And he's right, because I was pretty much a button-down, straight-laced lawyer. And so it wouldn't have worked if he had just started talking to me. And after the first 3 visits where he appeared in front of me physically, after that, he was just a voice in my head. And we communicated by telepathy. And so our dialogue went on for several months. And early on, he told me I'm not just here to satisfy your curiosity and answer your questions. I want you to write a book about my revelations so they'll be available to everyone. That led to my first book, Dancing on a Stamp. And then, sorry, go ahead if you want to jump in here.
No, go ahead.
So after the first dialogue that we had, which was really a question and answer, I'd ask questions and Albert would answer me, and I'd take notes and I'd end up writing my book. Then he disappeared out of my life for a while, and then he reappeared again in a very different form. I was sleeping in my bedroom, and I woke up one night, and I could see this ghost-like ethereal figure standing in the doorway of my bedroom. And as it looked, I looked, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And as it moved closer to me, I could see it was Albert, except he was in astral form. And I said, "Hi, Albert. What brings you here this time?" And he said, "Well, I'm here to take you on some astral trips because I want you to show you some things on the spirit side, other places in the galaxy, other places on our planet, and I want you to write about what you hear and see because I think that a picture is worth 1,000 words." So he then literally reached out, grabbed my astral hand, pulled it out of my physical body. I turned around and looked, and my physical body was still sound asleep in bed. And he took me by the hand, and we rose up through the ceiling, up through the clouds, and he led me through a shimmering doorway to the spirit side, and that was my first astral trip, was to go to the spirit side. And so those astral trips were detailed in my second book, Dancing Forever with Spirit. And at the end of that sort of set of trips, I spent some time writing my manuscript for my second book, and he disappeared again for a while. Then he came back again in astral form, similar to the first time. He appeared in my bedroom and took me on another series of astral trips. And the adventures that I saw and the people I spoke to there are detailed in my third book, Dance of Heavenly Bliss, which is just being released like right now as we're talking.
Absolutely, it is, and we're linking it on the screen as well. Okay, now when you're experiencing these astral trips, is this in the dream process?
No, it's not. It's not. I'm not dreaming. I'm actually awake, and the reason I know that is because every morning when he takes me back to my physical body and I slip back in, and I wake up the next morning, and all these memories of my trips are absolutely vivid, incredibly lucid and vivid memories, unlike any dream I've ever experienced. And I've had lots of dreams like everyone else, and usually they sort of fade within the first hour or two after you wake up. But these stood with me, and they were very clear in my memory for months after, certainly long enough for me to get to my typewriter and my keyboard and write down the details of what I saw. So there's no doubt that those were real trips, not dreams.
That's incredible. Okay. Would you call yourself a channel?
Well, yes, not in a traditional sense because I only channel Albert. Like a lot of channels will channel different entities, but I don't. I just channel Albert. And when I'm astral traveling, it's just like I'm having a conversation like you and I are having a conversation right now. He's actually there in astral form. I can see him. I can talk to him. So I guess I'm a channel, but not in the ways that some people think of channels.
Right. So you couldn't go into some sort of, you couldn't go through some sort of door now, in a sense, and bring Albert in.
No, he shows up when he's ready to show up, and I can sort of communicate with him by telepathy. When I need to. He's not always available to get into long conversations. And I can't dictate when he comes to take me on an astral trip. He won't tell me when he's coming back. He'll just show up one night, and then he might not show up again for 3 or 4 nights. So it's really his agenda. And so he always keeps me on edge. I'm never quite sure when he's going to come back.
That's different to other channels. What connection is Albert to you, do you think?
Well, he's one of my spirit guides. And so he volunteered for that position before I was born when I was making my life plan. And he's just one of, he says I have 3, he's just one of them. And he told me that our meeting and the connection that we've had was all planned beforehand, before I was born. That was basically part of my life plan, that he would show up at this particular time, and we would have the connection, and I would write my books. Of course, I don't remember any of that, but he tells me that, it wasn't by accident, it was all planned. And when I asked him, well, why did you choose me as a messenger? He said, it was because that I had some previous lives as a human on Earth, where I had some writing experience, and they thought that perhaps some of that would flow through to this life, and I'd be able to be an effective writer. And hopefully, I've accomplished that. But that was the reason that he chose me. I'm just one of his many messengers on Earth. He has quite a few. He hasn't disclosed how many, but he channels through a lot of different people. I'm just one of them. And his job is to get the message from spirit out to humanity, and so my books are just doing part of that job.
Right. Yeah, I mean that's very different to the channeling that I've been practicing. For me, it's turned now into me channeling my higher self. So it's my higher self, or God, or that aspect coming through in a sense. It used to have a separate name, but it's moved to this recognition that it is this part of me that's on the astral plane, and I'm able to connect with, and we're all able to connect with this higher self. But that's very different, obviously, to the way that it's working for yourself.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and it's very untypical. He conceded that. He said this is a very much of a different kind of contact. Most people don't get this direct sort of conversational contact with their guides or with their higher selves. But he did this very deliberately so that I could get very clear pictures and input about what I should write in my books. So it was a very special sort of a contact.
And it just proves to me that there are so many different truths. There are so many truths that there is not one defining truth. Do you think your truths are the only truth?
I do. I think that everything he's told me, I believe firmly in my heart is the truth. And I have no reason to doubt that. And I know that there are other channels and mediums and psychics who get slightly different messages. And I think it depends on who's giving the message, and sort of, and in terms of the receiver, in terms of what their own beliefs and prejudices are. So sometimes you kind of hear what you want to hear. And sometimes the channels, the spirits will send you messages that they know you will be agreeable to receiving. And so there are different nuances in what's coming from spirit. But for the most part, from what I can tell, in talking to other channels and psychics, is that the message from spirit the core message is fairly consistent, which is comforting because it validates everything that I've heard. And when I hear other people say similar things, as I say, slight different nuances in the interpretation, but the core message is always the same.
The core message is always the same. It's love. It's how much do we love ourselves? What would love do in the moment now? And that we seem to. There's a much bigger picture to all this. But when I've been channeling, it talks about there are infinite truths in a sense. There are not just one truth. The truth is being made up all the time as we discover ourselves, and there seems to be it's an unfathomable picture. And for me to definitely say this is the way it is, it's this way, that's it. Well, that's okay, but I think we should be prepared that potentially there's even a bigger expansion on top of that. We may, no one's come back to say that this is exactly the way it is. Yes, I know you've had the experience you're having, I'm having the experience I'm having, but we're still here in physical forms. We haven't left yet, and we have an amnesia to not remember exactly what it's all about. But you are right that the core message is still the same. What is your core message? Would you say is it love?
Yeah, absolutely. The core message is love, is that we're all part of the source who created everything. The source is love manifested. We're all part of it, and we really have to embrace love, and as humans, and try to discard our negative emotions. If you embrace love, there's no room for fear and anger and hate and all the other negative emotions. So love is really the key. And he says that is very much it just comes naturally on the spirit side. In our true home, when we're back as beings of energy, unconditional love is just whatever. We enjoy it from everyone. We give it to everyone. We get it from the source, and it's just a natural state of being. So the sort of love we have on Earth, where there's a lot of strings attached and a lot of expectations of things that have to come back, sort of conditional love, doesn't exist on the spirit side. So that's something that we humans have to deal with here on Earth, is to learn to love unconditionally and get rid of all the judgment and all the expectations and all the strings that we attach to the love we give to other people. And that's one of the big challenges.
Absolutely, yes, and I completely resonate with that message. But would you be shocked to find out when you do eventually cross over, that actually the picture that you were painting was even much more vast than what you understood it to be right now, and what you understood it to be was just the tip of the iceberg, and actually it was, it was beyond comprehension. Would that shock you to see that truth?
Not at all. I've always suspected that Albert is showing me bits and pieces of what's on the other side to serve his own agenda, and he's not showing me everything because he probably thinks it'll be overwhelming to me, because I'm over there with my human mind. I don't have my full soul mind, and so he doesn't want to overwhelm me. So he feeds me bits and pieces that he thinks I can handle and that I can write about. And it wouldn't surprise me a bit if there's a whole many different layers there that I haven't seen yet.
Would you also be surprised or shocked that actually who you thought Albert was maybe was something much greater and not actually what it actually appears to be? It's Albert something else. Would that shock you?
Not at all. No. I've always suspected that he is something more than what he has told me, and I hope someday to find out. And if it's not, well, I'm still on Earth. I'll find out when I cross over.
And what if that was you at the core source? What if it was Albert is you, and it's and you're that powerful that you are able to do these things and bring this information through, and actually you're just not at that stage to own that message yet, because this is just not where you're at. But to give you separation, and with the understanding that where you're at now, this is easier for you to swallow, that it's Albert separate from you taking you there, but actually really you have all this power.
Wouldn't shock me a bit. Albert has not given me any indication that is the case, but as I say, I wouldn't be surprised. I'm sort of open to anything, and certainly I know that Albert showing up as sort of a separate entity that I can talk to makes it much easier for me to sort of get the message and to carry on and write my books than if I had to sort of try to comprehend that I'm really talking to my higher self. So I think that was I don't know if that's the case or not,
or that powerful, or that you're that powerful.
I don't. Most days I don't feel very powerful at all, Kevin. But no, I understand what you're saying, and he's really giving me the picture that he thinks I can handle and I can swallow without too much, without being too upset.
I think
so.
Yeah, absolutely. I understand what you're saying. Don't worry, because to own that power is even I struggle with that with this concept right now. I struggle with it, and it really puts you in the God aspect. Really, and it really shows that if you have it and I have it, we all have it.
Absolutely, yeah, we do. And Albert likes to tease me. He says sometimes when he throws some new concepts at me that I can't quite wrap my mind around, he says, "Don't worry." He says, "You have to deal with the limitations of your puny human mind, and then once you cross over to the spirit side, it'll all come back to you." And you understand it completely. So he said, "Don't fuss about it if you don't get it now. You're just a human."
Okay.
So deal with your journey and your limitations.
Yeah. Well, I'm not trying to be a bully, but I'm trying to push some ideas on you that that I've had pushed on me, and it's really very empowering. It may not, if it doesn't fit, you don't go with it. It's just what if. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying this is the truth. I'm saying what if. And it's this new way of thinking has really changed me. I'll be honest with you, but I'm still I feel like you some days where I'm like, could I accept that truth? Is it really? Could I? No. Is that really me that's bringing that through? And that's how powerful I am, and I've got all the ability to change anything, and I can bring these wonderful messages in and change people's lives, and they can say to people that they've got that power too, to bring and to listen to that higher self within. Wow. But let's get into the book, because you've brought some wonderful information through, and that's gonna resonate with people. For me, actually, one of the ones was about Roswell, so I'm going to go straight there. Tell me about what you learned about Roswell.
Well, Albert took me to the Akashic Records, and leading up to this was sort of like he had said that there had been extraterrestrial races visiting Earth, very many different ones for a long time. And he said, "I'll give you an example," and he chose this because it's a famous historical event. It's been subject to a lot of controversy, as you know, Kevin. Took me to the Akashic Records, and I watched. and I watched it. What it was a basically a flying saucer, a flying spaceship, and it it crashed into a high altitude weather balloon that the U.S. government was experimenting with, and according to Albert, there was some glitch in its navigation system. All of a sudden, it went awry, crashed into this balloon, and then that sort of knocked out some other systems, and it crashed into the desert below near Roswell. And I saw it bounce a few times, and it came to rest. And inside, Albert showed me there were three occupants, three little humanoids. One of them was still moving; the other two appeared to be dead. And as I watched the military from the Roswell Army Air Base, they arrived on the scene, and they opened up the actually the door had been opened by one of the occupants, so they went inside and they pulled the three little guys out, and then they put the disc on a truck with a crane. They hauled everything off to the Roswell Army Air Base, and the little alien that was still alive was put on a hospital bed, and the doctors there tried to revive it, try to cure it because it had some internal injuries, and they worked at it for quite a few hours, and finally the little creature just died. It was unfortunate, but one of the things I said to Albert, did the little guy say anything before he died? And Albert said, no, he didn't. Well, he tried to communicate. We couldn't understand. Humans couldn't understand him. Well, what he did do was draw on a piece of paper a picture of an olive, a dove with an olive twig in its beak, which is the historical sign for peace. So that was kind of interesting. That happened before he passed away. Then all the bodies were taken away. They were embalmed to preserve them. They went away to California, and they eventually ended up in Area 51 in Nevada, where they are still embalmed in preservative liquids. The spacecraft is still there. Our scientists have not been able to figure out how it works, what its propulsion system was, or its avionics or anything, but it's still there. And of course, a lot of people have speculated about Area 51 in Nevada, and I saw that, yeah, it's still there. And so that's what happened. It was a spacecraft that crashed. Some humans saw it. There's been some testimony that the U.S. military decided to cover it up, and they've been covering it up ever since. And when they had a media conference and they showed they said it was a weather balloon that crashed, and they showed the remains of this weather balloon. Well, in fact, there was a weather balloon that crashed. It's what this little spacecraft hit. They didn't show the spacecraft, though. So there's been a massive cover-up ever since. Someday the truth will be revealed. We may have to get the X-Files to to get into Area 51 and show the world. But so that's what happened. So it was an actual alien spacecraft that crashed there.
That's incredible. I've got this guy I'm interviewing in Florida, some part of the States. I think it's Florida, actually, when I go to America for 3 months. And his dad, Philip J. Corso, this gentleman was worked for the Pentagon, and they put parts of the technology into companies, and it got reverse engineered, and that's where our fiber optics came from, and night vision and all sorts of stuff, apparently. And he won't give any interviews, but he will give a face-to-face interview. So I'm so grateful for that. But yeah, I think this really did happen, and that's so interesting that they could have, the weather balloon. They hit the weather balloon. That's not been talked about before. That's so different. I wonder if people like this, are talking the truth, yeah, and we have, the technology we have now is based on something that wasn't really ours.
Yeah, they did get some. Albert didn't get into that when I was looking at the scene in the Akashic Records. So they did obviously get some of the technology from there, but they haven't learned how to make the thing move, the propulsion system, which is the key. Like, how do you get a faster than light propulsion system? Haven't figured that out yet, but they've obviously picked up a few things, and it's unfortunate that the little alien didn't live, the one that survived the crash, because eventually we probably could have communicated with them and figured out a lot more things. But
yeah.
And I said to Albert, what happened? Like, this was a scout craft, basically. And I said to Albert, well, where was the mother craft? And he said, well, the mother craft was hiding behind the sun. And I said, why didn't they come to the rescue? And he said, because they were under strict instructions not to be visible and not to interfere. Otherwise, they could have come and picked up the little scout craft and taken off. But there are too many humans around by then, so they let it happen. And so the little craft and the humans are in the area 51 right now.
That's incredible, isn't it? So incredible. Imagine how empowering it would be for that knowledge to come up. But then, maybe general public is still not ready to hear that we are not alone. Maybe.
Well, I think we're getting closer, because there's more and more revelations coming out about UFOs and alien visitors. There's more sightings. There's more people, military people and higher officials who are coming out to say, yes, there are aliens. I mean, like one of them was Paul Hellyer, former Canadian defense minister years ago, and he's made revelations to say, yes, there are aliens around here. He got that information as defense minister of Canada, and he's been making revelations. So more and more of it is leaking out, and eventually they're just trying to get people accustomed to the revelations, and so that when it does come out, they won't be panicky, they won't be fearful. They'll say, okay, well, this has been going on for a while. Finally, the truth is out. And so I think we're all being prepped. That humanity is being prepped for this big revelation.
Absolutely. I just thought that was fascinating information to come through in your book. And thank you so much for sharing that. Really, really interesting stuff. Well, it all is. I mean, but, that's just, you wouldn't expect that. That's something different. You even got, when you was at the Akashic Records, got to view the building of Stonehenge. I mean, what did you see?
Well, it was in Akashic Records. It actually showed it was one of my past lives as a Druid priest. This is on the Salisbury Plain, about 3000 BC. And as the scene unfolded, I had as a Druid priest, I had a dream in which I was told to come to the plain this particular day and watch for a message. And so I was standing there in the plain, and then the spacecraft landed on the plain. Out comes this human. He looked very much like a human, except he's about 8 feet tall. So very much the same as us, except a little bit taller. His name was Mogons, and he came from a planet many light years away. And he said that he was there to build a communications beacon. And so he had plans. He laid out these plans on a parchment, very detailed plans. And he said that he wasn't allowed just to build it himself, that he needed to enlist the help of the local people. So he got me to organize the villagers. I basically introduced him to the villagers as a god, to say he's come here he wants you to help him build a structure that he needs as a navigation beacon. Of course, they didn't know what a navigation beacon was, but I told them it was building something to help them, a place to worship the gods. And so then, with the help of he had two special tools: a laser cutting tool, which could really cut through anything, rock, whatever, with precision, and an anti-gravity wand, which basically, if you pointed it at a big boulder, it was light. It was like it was floating. And so, with his guidance, we went to two special quarries, and with the laser tool, they cut out the blocks and then moved them with the anti-gravity wand back to Stonehenge, put them in place, all the uprights and the lintels and everything else that as Stonehenge, and the reason that he put them in a special array and with special rocks was because they had special properties which helped them function as a navigation beacon. So when was this all done, he took a little box which he called the power source from his spaceship, put it in the center, and basically turned it on, and he said, now that will be a navigation beacon for spaceships that are in warp drive, which they can't access through other navigation facilities. And so it was, and apparently Stonehenge, Earth was on a galactic ley line that was important for navigation. And so then he turned it on, and he disappeared. And a couple hundred years later, he came back, retrieved the power box because that beacon was no longer needed, and took it away. The stones are still there, and the locals believed that it was a place to worship the gods. And so they never knew it was a beacon, or they never knew about the power source. So that was how Stonehenge was built, according to the Akashic Records.
And it was a beacon for him to get back, or for them, not for him, but for his people, or?
Yeah, for his people. It was a navigation beacon. And apparently he said that when their ships go into warp drive, the normal navigation equipment didn't function properly, and so they had to build these special beacons that would allow them, when they're in warp drive, to basically figure out where they were. And so that's what it was. It was a navigation beacon for these people.
Wow. Okay. Okay. Yeah, and we, yeah, well, that's and the stones that are on some very impressive ley lines. They are actually on there. If you speak to people that have looked into these monolithic structures, yeah, ley lines is a very important part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was important for him to have the beacon on that particular ley line, and so and then after a time, as I said, a couple hundred years later, he came and took the power box away because they had found another beacon. I think he said it was on one of the moons of Jupiter or Saturn or whatever, that they had placed another beacon and didn't need the one on Earth. And I suspect they may be concerned about eventually humans discovering its real purpose and messing around with the power source, and so they decided to pull it out before things got out of hand.
Absolutely.
But initially, that's what it was.
Okay. Well, that's again, you didn't expect this type of information to come into the books, did you?
No,
No.
Albert shows me things, and I never know what he's going to show me, but I know that whatever he shows me, I'm supposed to write about it and put it in my book.
Absolutely.
So I follow his lead.
Absolutely. Well, it's yeah, and there's reasons for this as well. Absolutely. Okay. Now, obviously you spent time on the spirit side. When you was on the spirit side, what was it like? I mean, was it just? Was it just undescribable, or was there a certain feeling with it, and an energy with it?
Well, initially, when I stepped through the doorway, I always find myself in a beautiful meadow. It's like lush green grass and beautiful trees and wildflowers. So it was very, very, very pleasant, like a paradise, basically, but very real. And then further off in the distance, there's this white city. It's sort of like white buildings, towers, spires, whatever it is. He called Aglaya, which is one of the cities over there. And so it was very much like a city, except it was all white stone, and the city is full of people. They look like humans dressed in various attire, like various garments from many different eras and ages on Earth. So it's very colorful. It's like a costume ball as I'm walking down the main street. And I asked Albert, why is that so? And he said, well, souls there can choose to appear to others in any form that they want, and they can change it as often as they want. And he says they will often choose to appear in the costume and appearing like they were in one of their favorite lives back on Earth. So that's why there's such a diversity. And he said, but some souls just choose to appear in their very natural state, which is like a ball of glowing energy, a ball of glowing light. And so it's a very interesting place. It looks very much, it's very beautiful. The people are all happy, animated, smiling, laughing. It looks like just a wonderful place to be, and but it's very real. It's not mystical at all. It appeared very real to me. Now maybe that's just for my benefit. I don't know. Maybe when I cross over, I'll find something different. But that's what it's always appeared to me when I went over there.
And when you went over as well, you got to meet one of your guardian angels, I believe.
Yes. Her name was Anna Peel, and we went into a building that Albert called the Hall of Angels, where angels hang around. And so she introduced herself, says, I'm one of your guardian angels. I've been watching over you since you were born. And I said, oh, well, that's nice. Didn't know I had one. What exactly do you do? And she says, well, I watch over you to make sure you do not suffer an untimely death on Earth. And I said, well, what do you mean by that? And she said, well, your soul has the absolute right to decide when to exit the incarnation. And so no one dies by accident. So even if a plane crashes and 300 people die, that was no accident. All those souls chose that time and place to make their exit. And she says, but because all these humans on Earth are running around with free will to make decisions and take actions, and because they don't remember what's in their life plan or where they came from, she says sometimes this clash, this interaction of free wills could result in something or an unforeseen happening that your soul had not contemplated. In that case, we step in, because if that sort of happenstance could result in you dying in an accident, we step in to prevent that. That's why we're called guardian angels. We stop your untimely death. And I said, well, you must have been very busy with me, because I don't recall any near misses. And she said, oh, yeah. She says, I've saved your butt more times than you can count. And so she gave me, 3 examples. And then when she mentioned them, I sort of recalled, I guess I was close, just saved by an inch on a few instances. She says, that was me. I was there to save your butt, basically. She says, and that's the role of guardian angels. And if they foresee that something mishap may occur, they will try to prevent you from going to where that will happen. So, like if you're on your way to the airport to catch a plane, and they can see that the plane is going to crash, they will send you a strong message before you get there to say, change your plans. Don't go on that flight. Take another flight. And if that doesn't work, they may give you a flat tire on the way to the airport so that you miss your plane. So there's a number of ways that they can actually, prevent a mishap, either through messages or physically intervening. And most of the time, we're not even aware of it. You get a flat tire on the way to the airport. The last thing you're going to think is that my guardian angel caused my tire to go flat. You may think afterwards that it's lucky that the plane you were supposed to go on crashed, and you can say, "Oh, thank God I wasn't on that plane." But you may not realize who did it to, who's there to sort of make sure you weren't on the plane. So that's the role of the guardian angels, and they're there for everyone. Some people realize that they miss near death by something that seems like divine intervention, and that's clearly their guardian angels. But for most of us, we're not even aware of it. But they're there, and that's their role, and it's a very important role. And this lady was a very special person, really a beautiful angel. Didn't have wings on her shoulders, but a strikingly beautiful lady. And I was very happy to have her on my side.
Yes, absolutely. And this book this book also has teachings in it as well. There's lots of teachings in this, in the sense of, there's one chapter 21, where you talk about uncontrollable urges.
Yeah, that was, I got to meet a soul on the spirit side who was formerly an Irish priest in Ireland. And so this guy told me a story, and he basically said that he was raised in a strong Roman Catholic family, as you can imagine, in Dublin, grew up, serving mass, followed all the rules. And at some point, but he was very much of had active hormones. He liked girls and liked dating girls, but at some point he decided that he should try giving the priesthood a shot. So he went into the priesthood, went into seminary in Dublin, and graduated. Spent the first couple years as a sort of an under priest to the parish priest in one of the parishes in Dublin, and then he got assigned to a rural parish south of Dublin. And everything was fine for a while, but then he found that his sexual urges were getting stronger and stronger, and he tried to control them. Eventually, he gave in to the dark side, and he ended up molesting altar boys in his rectory. And this went on for quite a while, and no one found out until a few years later, and he got called into the bishop's office, and the bishop said, "I've had a complaint from the parents of one of your altar boys that he was sexually molested." And so the priest said, "Well, then I just broke down. I confessed everything to the bishop and said, I'm sorry, I couldn't control myself." And the bishop says, "Yeah, not to worry. God will forgive you and we'll send you off to another parish." And the bishop had told the parents of this little boy that their son had an amazing, vivid imagination, that this could never happen. Priests do not molest altar boys, and they should never speak of this to anyone. And the bishop was really more concerned about protecting the reputation of the church than the welfare of the kids in the parish. Anyway, the priest got transferred to another parish. He tried his best, soon gave in to the dark side again and started molesting kids. It was moved again. And after the third one, finally the bishop threw in a towel and brought him into the diocese and the head office, gave him a desk job where he had no contact with children. And so this priest said, "Here I am. I ended up, dying in my 60s. I'm back here. I realize what a horrible thing I did then." He said, but I just really couldn't control myself. I had these strong sexual urges, and I didn't have a natural outlet. And so I ended up doing what I did. And he was very sorry. He said the big problem in his mind, after talking to other former priests who had similar problems, was that the church's policy on celibacy for priests was just really wrong-headed, and it ended up causing a lot of abuse over the years. We've heard about it in Ireland and America and the UK and Canada and everyone else. And it's just because priests do not have a natural outlet for their sexual urges. So that was a very interesting story, and I was quite happy to meet this guy, and I agreed to put his disclosure in my book.
And in one sense as well, when he had crossed over, what judgment was there, or was he the judge of his actions? In that, was he the judge? In a life review of what he had to do, of the pain that he had inflicted on others?
Yeah, absolutely. Because there is no judgment from God or the source. We judge ourselves when we have a life review. So he had his life review, and of course it was painful in places as he watched, the harm he had caused to these young boys. It was a learning tool. A life review is not meant to make you feel really badly about what you did, but to learn from what you've done, and so you can plan your next life and try to do better the next time. So he really judged himself. He felt very sorry. But he just said, that that's just part of a life on Earth. And he said before, when he planned his life, he had thought that he would likely be a priest, but he thought that he could resist the temptation to abuse young boys. But it turned out that once he got here in his life, he failed. He failed that challenge. He felt badly about it, but he said that he really was anxious to go back to another life on Earth, try to make amends. So he judged himself, and he resolved to be a better person next time.
I wonder what the amends would be. Do you think there was karma in that?
Oh, there's always some karma. He didn't quite say what he would do in his next life. It could be that he might be somebody who is abused himself, or it could be something else entirely different. But certainly he earned a lot of negative karma from that life, and he really wanted to go back and try to make amends, either by receiving some abuse himself, or by doing something very positive to earn some positive karma credits. So he was at the stage where he hadn't quite planned his next life, but he was really dealing with the past life and trying to understand where he went off the rails.
Right. Okay. Very. Again, just completely unexpected that you would have come across someone that was at that stage or had committed those types of crimes. But then again, you'd had meetings with, Jesus Christ and Adolf Hitler. I mean, that's two opposites in a sense. But what was the teachings behind, or what did they have to say? Well, obviously the two. This is a quite, lengthy discussions I'm sure you had with these people.
Well, I was quite surprised, and Albert was really trying to surprise me. He deliberately did so by putting these two polar opposites together. And we walked up to them, and they're sitting on the bench, the two of them, having a very friendly discussion. Here's the paragon of virtue and one of the most evil monsters that ever lived on our planet. The two of them were sitting together. And so I had a conversation, and Adolf Hitler, his real name is Matthew. He initially showed up in his uniform and his little mustache and everything, so I'd recognize him. And then he morphed into his common appearance over there as a nice young man. And he said, what I did was absolutely horrible. He said, I let the dark side of humanity take over. I let my negative emotions get out of control. He said he didn't plan any of the bad deeds. In his life plan, he had planned to be born where he was, and with a strong possibility of him getting into politics. But he didn't know at the time, before he was born, how that would play out, whether he'd be a good politician, or, as it turned out, he was a very bad politician, a ruthless leader who caused a lot of harm. And he said that's how it went. And when he looks back on it, he said he doesn't know what happened, but he just went totally off the rails. And he had a lot of help from his henchmen, Himmler and Goebbels and some of the other people. He was egged on by a lot of other people whose emotions went out of control, negative emotions, and so that's where he ended up. But he did say, he had a very lengthy life review. He had to go over watch all the horrible deeds that he was responsible for. It was very much of a great learning tool. He did say that he has met many of the souls of the victims in his death camps, and they give him unconditional love, because every soul has unconditional love for every other soul, no matter what happened on Earth. So there's never any carryover of hatred or need for revenge when souls journey back to the spirit side. So all of his victims, basically, that he's met, they've all said, okay, we're back here now. We love you unconditionally. We forgive you for anything that you did. We understand you were having a human journey and you went way off the rails, but now we're back here, and hopefully you can plan your next life and get on with it. So it was a very interesting conversation. Then when I spoke to Jesus, he of course didn't have any regret or any remorse about what happened in his life. He was the master who agreed to incarnate on earth at that time to help humanity, move on up the spiritual ladder. It was felt that humanity needed a kick in the pants. They needed somebody to make a very dramatic statement, effectively to start a new religion, which he did. So that's why he incarnated. And because he was a master, he knew how to focus his thoughts in a very concentrated way, so that he could tap into the energy of the universe. That's how he created his miracles. Walking on water, turning water into wine is all Jesus, because of his ability to focus his thoughts. And thoughts are waves of energy, and he could use them in a very powerful way. And so he did that, and he did his miracles to draw attention. He wanted to gather followers. He wanted people to take notice of him, and he was very good at that. And he gathered his disciples and all his other followers. And I said to him, well, if you had power to create miracles, why did you let yourself be crucified on the cross? And he said, well, I could have prevented that, but I knew that that would be a very dramatic statement to my followers to have see me die on the cross and then rise up from the dead and go back into heaven. And he said that would be a very dramatic statement. So he wanted that to happen. He allowed it to happen. He could have prevented it. And so that was his statement, his reason for being there. I said to him, did you anticipate that the Christian church would develop the way it has after your death? And he says, no, he expected that there would be a religion formed, didn't know quite how it would turn out. He says it's unfortunate that in a lot of respects, the leaders of the church have hijacked his agenda. They spread his message, but they've added a lot of add-ons and rules and funny beliefs. They've embellished it. They've basically hijacked his pure message of love for yourself and love for one another. And he said that's a bit unfortunate. He said, but that's the way human life is on Earth. You're never quite sure how it's going to go. You can sort of give it a start, and then it just has to play out. And I said to him, well, are you ever going to come back again? A lot of people say there should be a second coming, that you should come back and save us because we're in a bad spot again. He says he doesn't know, depends on what the Council of Wise Ones says, but he's willing to help in any way he can. So it was very interesting conversation. He's sort of like somebody who started something a long time ago and is looking at how it developed and sort of shaking his head and saying, that wasn't exactly how I thought it would go, but I guess we have to live with it.
Very interesting. And from that as well, it just goes to show that maybe life plans as we understand them are quite different. We're sometimes told that to me it feels like we have free will, but we all have a divine purpose, don't we? And it's almost like we choose that calling before we come down here, but that calling can go off stray.
Absolutely, yeah. You choose the major aspects of your life in your life plan, but because you have free will and because you don't remember that you have a life plan, then you can often go off course. And sometimes it's only slightly off course. In some cases, it's way off course, like Hitler and some of the other serial killers and so on. So you're never quite sure where it's going to go. But as Albert says, that's just one of the challenges of a life on Earth, is that you come here, you have a divine plan, but you don't know exactly what it is.
And
so you have to try to figure it out.
Would you say the only way to figure that out, rather than going to see someone else, if you want to find the answers within, is to listen to your inner intuitive side, which is your higher self, maybe the God spark within you, to see what feels right and what doesn't feel right, and just go with what mainly feels right and what your passion is. Then you'll find your life plan if you want to do it by yourself.
Absolutely, yeah. And the best way to find out where you should be heading is to listen to the messages from your higher self, from your guides. They're giving you messages all the time, and it's very subtle. Most of the time, it's like flashes of intuition, whispers in your mind, gut feelings, feeling in your heart. And when you get those, you should really pay attention to it and follow it, because they're trying to guide you down the right path. And the trouble we all have is that our minds are so cluttered with so many other thoughts that we often miss these messages, or if we get them, we don't understand what they're saying or where they're coming from, or we try to rationalize a different course of action. So that's why it's not easy. I mean, I said to Albert, why don't you just tell me, every day what I should do every step of the way in my life? And he said, well, that would be too easy. You have to sort of figure it out for yourself. Because if I did that, at the end of the day, you'd go back to the spirit side and say, why did you do that? Because I wanted the challenge of trying to find out what my life's purpose is and where I should be going and what I should be doing myself, because that's one of the tests that we have as a human on Earth. So that's why our guides aren't as explicit with everyone as Albert has been with me in terms of when I'm writing my books. Now, mind you, Albert doesn't give me personal advice. He only gives me information that he wants me to write about. And so I can't say to him, what should I do tomorrow should I go here? Should I go there? Should I buy this? Should I buy that? Where should I go on vacation? He refuses to tell me anything personal. So I have to figure the rest of that out myself.
Well, yeah, because, if they really wanted to come down here, they would do. But then we'd be looking up at them as gods, yeah? And really, I think the whole purpose of this journey, well, maybe part the purpose of this journey is to realize, we are the gods that we were always looking for, and we have all the answers within. And actually, just by going within, we can go. It's a way forward for joy, for bliss, for purpose, for love, for to remember who we are. It's by going within, you're remembering who you truly are, which is the God source.
Yes.
Yeah. And if you can take anything away from your work, it's that we can get access to this information that you've got by going within, but we don't trust ourselves enough that we're lovable enough to have that power.
Yeah, exactly. That's the big challenge. We have to trust the feelings of our heart. Basically, that's our soul speaking, our higher self. We have to sort of follow that. But we have these human minds that have their own agendas, and they want to go here and they want to go there, and they often sort of dismiss what their heart is telling them, which is really wrong. And that's one of the big battles we all face every day, is to try to listen to our messages, follow the feelings in our heart, go within ourselves, as you say, because that's where we find the true meaning of our life here on Earth.
Now, there's 27 chapters in this book, and we've only touched on just a few here. So, and we're already 53 minutes into the interview. My final question, really, well, one of my final questions is, why call it Dance of Heavenly Bliss?
That is because on one of my last trips in this book, Albert, he'd been taking me to a lot of sort of heavy places where there's a lot of sometimes disturbing things I'd seen, sometimes frightening things, like in the black hole. So I said to him, when can I have a fun trip, something fun? So he said, okay, fine. So he took me to the spirit side. I met up with a soul called Votan, and he and I had several lives together on Earth before. One of the last ones was in Tikal. We were in a Mayan tribe, and we ended up getting married. He was a male, I was a female, and so he said, so that's our history. And he said, here, you want to have some fun? I'll show you. He was standing there. He literally stepped into me, so that our energies merged temporarily. It was like an ecstatic, exhilarating merger union of atoms and energy, and it was just like two entities that suddenly become one for a few seconds. It was like an amazing experience. It was like probably the closest thing that you could come to having sex on the spirit side, only it was way better. And so that lasted, I don't know how long, and then he just stepped away. I said, wow, what was that? He said, that's a dance that we do over here quite frequently and openly. It's called the Dance of Heavenly Bliss. And it's something that you can do anytime you want when you cross back over here, but I wanted to show you what it was like. So it was an amazing experience.
I'm heading to heaven. I'm single, so I'm okay.
Well, after that, I was anxious to get back because, that was a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Well, what would you say then is the most important message of Dance of Heavenly Bliss that we could take away once we've read the book?
Well, I think the message in this one is that he wanted me to appreciate by letting me interview all these various souls all had different tales about life on Earth, different challenges and so on. Jesus and Hitler sitting together. He wanted me to appreciate that we're all souls having a human journey, and that every journey is different. We've all been to different places. We've all faced different challenges. We've all had different incarnations, on Earth and other planets. And so the main message is appreciate that we're all souls having journeys, and that we should never judge other people, because you don't know where they've been or where they're going or what challenges they are facing or have faced in the past. And understand that we're really all part of one. And so you shouldn't, look at somebody else walking down the street and think that they're lesser than you, or that they've done something bad, or you wonder why they're not doing the same thing that you're doing. And it's because they have a different history, they have a different journey. And at the end of the day, we all end up back on the spirit side, where all the baggage we have on Earth is just left behind. And we come back with wisdom and experiences, memories of our experiences, and we all go back to the spirit side. So it's really, when you're looking at people walking down the street, people you work with, your neighbors, appreciate that they're all having a human journey, and they're just like you. They're all part of the source. And so above all, don't judge other people.
And that goes to, absolutely, thank you so much for that important message. And that goes to not judging people as well who don't want to look into these subjects. There may be a bigger reason why they're not even considering these subjects. You can't judge them just because we do that, their lives could be so much better. They may be very happy where they are.
Exactly. Yeah, it means no judging, period, no matter what they are doing, what they believe, and if they don't believe what we believe, then fine. If they're happy with their belief, let them carry on. When they get back to the spirit side, they'll see the full picture. And so don't fuss over it. Like let everyone have their own place, on Earth, in the universe.
Well, I just really appreciate you for bringing, this information through like you have, because it is a different look on these subjects, and these have been very divinely chosen. These subjects in your book for a reason, for the people that they're going to come across this material, that's going to alter their lives. So I'd just like to say that I can't wait to get you back on for the next book, and I really, really enjoyed you coming on today. So Garnet, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I enjoyed it very much.
Well, we've come to an end on tonight's show. Don't forget that you can listen and watch all our past interviews on the More Show's official YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new daily shows. You may also find out more on all past and upcoming guests on the show via themoreshow.co.uk, and do like us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates. So until next time, be safe.